Greetings and salutations, fine people. I'm Patti Alvarez. Welcome to The Good Soul, a show where we'll have supercharged chats with everyday humans from all walks of life and unpack what in their story will inspire us all. We'll extract the untapped wisdom, distill it, and serve it up to you in all the right ways that will engage, enlighten, and most of all, inspire growth within your soul. I think people are awesome. So join me on this journey through the hearts and minds of ordinary people to uncover the good soul within you. This is The Good Soul. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Good Soul. We are on episode 39, and today we are talking unlocking financial well-being. I'm with my friend and yoga compadre. This is Traci Shanklin. Welcome, Traci.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Honestly, it's really exciting because we see people come and go at the studio, and you don't know a lot about them, and you just came on our retreat with us. We spent a week together in Mexico, which was wonderful.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. And I got to know a lot about you. So beyond what I think is a little more exciting is you were an actor in your former life.
Yes,
so,
I was.
Yeah,
yes. I moved to LA in 90, this totally dates me, but 94-ish. And I did it for 10, 12 years on and off. I mean, I was always doing other things because actors have to do other things. But I certainly lived the actor lifestyle and financially and otherwise, piecing it together and having that variable income. So part of what I do today, it very much was in great part about that period in my life.
Did you feel out of control in that point, or even though you were on a budget that was kind of inconsistent, you felt in control?
I felt out of control. I mean, I had moments of control, but you definitely, when you have variable income like that, if you're not planning ahead, then you can find yourself in this sort of credit card floating cycle. And I very much did that during that period in my life.
I can't imagine that because you seem so buttoned up and like having your act together.
No, I mean, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you want to live life as large as you can. So
sure, especially especially in La La Land, right? I mean, forget it. Yeah. So what I read, and this really resonated with me, that nearly 64% of Americans identify with financial stress as being their top aggravator, which I thought was like, whoa. I definitely can attest to that. I mean, I personally have been self-employed my entire adult life. I say this pretty regularly. My dad was kind of like a rags to riches type story. I'm one of three girls, and they like to spoil us. We grew up in the 80s, as you did. So, we loved our Guess jeans and our big hair and all that stuff. So going from that into, and this is why I asked about how you handled being an actor, is going from that into self-employment, into being with Manny. I never really had a fixed income. I always kind of, to this day, in a way, like kind of wing it, sort of. And it's very stressful because sometimes we're high on the hog and other times it's not so much that way, especially being in business. So, and that's par for the course. But so I'm excited to learn more about what you have to offer. And who knows, you might have a client by the end of this podcast.
That would be lovely. I totally love to work with people.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. That's great. So let's get a little bit real quick into the most viewed video on your YouTube page, and the one that really hit home to me was your why. Talking about your, and before we go any further, just briefly, where'd you grow up? What, just a general history on you would be great.
So I grew up mostly in Northern Virginia. So most of my life, but my dad was in the labor movement and we moved around a lot. So I lived in Jersey, I lived in Massachusetts, but Northern Virginia, because of DC, its proximity to DC, was home.
Okay.
Because he would kind of, go back and forth between being in a region to being back with the international.
What does labor movement mean?
Labor movement, he was a union leader.
Okay. In a specific trade, or?
He was with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. All right.
He actually retired as the general president of the international.
Wow. Yeah. Is he still with us?
He is.
He is. Lucky for you. I like, okay, that's great. That's really great. Good for you. You're lucky. You're lucky. My dad isn't. And he's so, I'm like, you're so lucky you have your parents. All right, cool. So, okay. So you grew up in Northern Virginia.
I grew up in Northern Virginia and, finished high school in Northern Virginia, went to James Madison. That's where I graduated from. And then, somewhere in college had the dream to go to Hollywood. I was in pageants, so I was. I could tell looking at pictures of you. Did you have, pageants, any acting or singing or any performing in high school? Not so much in high school. I was very shy in high school. I was on drill team, so I was a dancer, but I was very shy and insecure, frankly. And so I really was afraid to audition for plays, although I did do community theater younger. Okay. And then backing up, I had a stutter. My mom put me in community theater because of my stutter, because she was trying to give me an avenue to work through that, that anomaly. Mm-hmm. And it was, I found that, or maybe she even read somewhere, I have no idea. My mom is no longer with us, so I can't ask her this question. But I found that when I was being a character, the stutter wasn't as strong. So cool. Yeah. I love that human being stuff. Yes, it really. It just and P.S., I just have to say that not shy people are insecure too. So you're not the only one. No, only kidding. Anyway. Well, and I think, I think we all have some level of insecurity. I work with that in financial well-being. I find that we all come with some limiting beliefs, right? Mm-hmm. So that is part of insecurity. Mm-hmm. And some of our programming from our early childhood is very much woven into who we are and how we deal with money. So it's probably like a yoga pose. It's very indicative of a lot about your character, how you handle your finances. That's why employers probably look at our credit reports when they go to hire us. Yes, because it is. I would agree. How did you meet your husband? You mentioned that I was an actor. I went to LA to pursue the dream. Right. I did it for, 8 years, where that was predominantly my career. Okay. Though I had to piece some other things together, as I mentioned, to float during those times. That like waitressing or? I didn't waitress. I actually worked in public affairs, and I had a relationship with a PR firm, and I did a lot of work for them. So I would do like contract work for them. Okay. All right. So you had like a real job kind of. Yeah, I did. I did a fair amount of political affairs and stuff in LA. So. And were they cool with you if you're like, hey, like one of your notables is Grosse Pointe Blank, right? Yes. She was Jenny Slater. Jenny Slater and Grosse Pointe Blank. I think that's really exciting. Were they cool if you had to go take a role as Jenny Slater for a couple weeks or whatever? They were. I mean, because it was contract work, it was usually I knew like I have to work this 5-week period for this client. So it was the kind of boxed work. I could move from project to project. Okay. Yeah. So yes, I didn't have any issues really. I mean, I'm sure there were times that there were conflicts, but I don't remember there being any grand conflicts. Big. Okay. So was your husband a part of that world, or no? Did you meet him in the 7-Eleven? We met at a work conference when I moved to the financial services industry. Okay. So I had just started with the financial services industry. He was an investment consultant, and we met at a conference. Wow. Yeah. And it was love at first sight, or were you friends first? We were friends first. I mean, to listen to him tell the story, I think it might have been a little love at first sight for him. Mm-hmm. And for me, there was definitely a second when I actually asked my boss if he was married. And my boss said, I think so. And I said to my boss, and he quoted me at our wedding, you said to me, that's too bad, because he's the kind of guy I'm supposed to be with. Oh, that's very sweet. So, okay. All right. We are going to wrap this segment up on that note. Right. That is beautiful. And we're going to learn a lot about also your extended family and how this has had an impact on, or not your extended, your children, of course, and how this has had an impact on your chosen course now. Yeah. So guys, don't go away. We'll catch up with you for segment 2 on The Good Soul. Thanks for being here.
This segment of The Good Soul is brought to you by Aaron Fisnick, certified luxury home specialist with Ivester Jackson Christie's International Real Estate. Aaron serves all levels of the greater Lake Norman region real estate market, and whether buying or selling, she is very much the lady who will deliver like no other. Many of us at Good Soul are also really happy clients. Aaron can be reached at 704-728-5657 or reach out to me and I'll get you guys connected. Thank you, Aaron Fisnick, and thank you guys for tuning in and supporting The Good Soul. Welcome back, Traci, and welcome back, Good Soul fam, to episode 39. We are talking unlocking financial well-being. And Traci, your story is so interesting to me that we kind of ate up most of segment 1 talking about you. So let's kind of make this kind of segue, because I'll say it again, that YouTube video really hit me good. So talk to me about what got you into financial planning, what's the word again?
Financial well-being.
Financial well-being, yes.
Financial well-being coaching. So it really started, and it seems like they seem like oxymorons in a way, like they're very, very specific moments in my life. But I am the mother through adoption.
Okay.
And went through a pretty dramatic 2 years getting my oldest daughter home. She was born in Haiti.
Okay.
And so it really was, she came home. When she finally came home, she had a lot of trauma because she had been moved around a lot.
How old was she when she got here?
She came home a week before her second birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she wasn't an infant?
No. We met her when she was 4 months old, and we were able to move her from an orphanage into a foster home. Okay. But there's one of the things that I learned is when we were dealing with her trauma, because now she's 2 and she's coming to a completely new environment. Well, she knew us, as much as a 2-year-old could know us. We had been going back and forth over that almost 2 years, a year and 10 months. We had been going back and forth, and we would spend time with her whenever we, as much time as we could spend with her while we were there. And, so she knew us, but everything had just turned upside down for her. She, went to sleep one night.
Sure.
Haiti.
How old is she now?
She's 14.
All right. So this was post-hurricane, correct?
Yes. She was in utero during hurricane.
Okay.
So, she wasn't born in Port-au-Prince. She was born on the other side of the island. However, that, obviously that affected
everybody.
Entire island.
Why does it take so long? Why did you meet her at 4 months and not get her until almost 2 years later?
The international adoption process is just complicated. And
not just Haiti?
I think Haiti is probably a little more, particularly during that time, was very complicated. They were coming off of the earthquake, so documents were harder to get authenticated and the way in which they have to be authenticated. But I also think we also happened to hit during a political election, and it's, they, God willing, like they're not like, thank God for our election that went so smoothly this last time, but they don't have that. And like democracy does not prevail there.
Okay.
And there's a lot of, they do runoffs, and people, like the president leaves and goes into exile.
Oh, geez.
It's very, very heated.
And you were kind of stuck in that.
And we got stuck in that. My husband has 2 children from his first marriage. So we had to have a special presidential exemption. The president of Haiti had to sign an exemption for us to adopt. And it just got stuck in the system.
Wow.
And so it just dragged on and on and on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did this bring you to becoming a financial wellness coach?
Well,
because that's a whole nother episode. I'm sitting here going, I want to have a whole nother episode if you want about that, because to me, that's a very compelling story. I mean, that's
I would love to talk about it. I think if it can help people, particularly
that's the goal of the show.
Yeah, that are doing, thinking about adoption or international adoption in particular, I would love to go down that path. But so for me, when she was dealing with all this trauma, it was a daily thing. She was very much in that fight, flight, freeze response mode. And it's not that it was all bad. There were definitely good moments, but she really could not transition well. It was really, isolating all of us because we couldn't really move her around without there being a lot of trauma for her.
So define trauma. I know we keep talking about this.
Well, trauma, in her
tantrums?
case, tantrums. Yeah. In her case, she was a runner and a fighter,
Okay.
So she would both, and, it's interesting to watch a child go through that fight, flight, freeze, because she would run, fight, and then freeze, like go almost catatonic because she'd be so exhausted from this whole explosion of emotions. Her nervous system was just so dysregulated. And I really didn't know what to do with it. I was getting a lot of well-meaning people giving me a lot of parenting advice, but none of it resonated for a child like in her circumstances. So I really just started reading every book I could find. And shockingly, there's not a ton of books on adoption. There's a lot of books on how to adopt. There's not a lot of books about what happens after you finalize this adoption.
Sure. And the culture shock. And like you said, the trauma.
Yeah. And I found this one book that changed everything. It's called The Connected Child. There's two authors, but one of the authors, Karen Purvis, has a she's a professor at university. I want to say it's TCU, so Texas Christian University.
Okay.
And so she teaches a course on children who come from early traumatic experiences. And it was the book that changed everything, because as I read this book, it was talking about how the brain wires itself. And we're going back to even in utero, like if the biological mom is in stress, baby is receiving that stress hormone. So it was just, it just changed everything because it opened me up to the field of study called neuroplasticity. Okay. And it's truly, her whole premise is that, is built on neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity in its simplest form is the brain's ability to rewire itself.
Okay.
So we learn, our brain, it's like brushing our teeth, right? We do it over and over again, and the brain kind of creates these neural pathways that shortcut itself, right? So it's a known path. I'm going to take this path every time I have to go brush my teeth.
Yes.
But we do that with feelings as well. So not just with actions.
With physical, right.
So with feelings, she was building this neural pathway of every time I transition, it's going to be something scary or new or, unknown. And so she was responding to this in a neural pathway situation, even though nothing was threatening, there was nothing happening.
So, for example, like walking into a restaurant or taking her onto an airplane, in like that kind of circumstance.
So taking her out of her stroller.
Taking her, oh, wow. So something that's simple.
Yeah, like, because that was a safety. Taking her out of her stroller suddenly became like a triggering event for her.
Okay.
So it was all, there were so many things. I mean, I could tell you countless stories of being in situations that were, horrible. They were horrible because they were embarrassing. They were horrible because she's Black and I'm white. So there were times where
like, what's going on here?
To defend myself, and not defend myself so much, but explain.
Yeah, of course. Explain yourself. Yeah.
And so it was just a very, it was a really traumatic time. So I learned all about this neuroplasticity. I applied it. It was really it literally changed everything. When we changed the way in which we were dealing with her and her behavioral issues and dealt with and approached it with great compassion, everything, it was within, I don't know, in a short period of time, we started to be able to take her slowly to events without it being, a transitional issue.
Okay, so give me a scenario A and a scenario B, how the old you would have handled it and how the neuroplastic version of you would have handled it.
The old me was there many times, and I would handle it in ways, I would be in reactive mode. I mean, I'll give you a one scenario. I took her, I mentioned the stroller. I had to take her to the doctor because she was constipated. So it was right when we brought her home. She hadn't had a bowel movement in 5 or 6 days. I was worried because she was uncomfortable. I could tell she was uncomfortable. And I took her to the pediatrician, and they wanted to weigh her so they could tell me how much Miralax, I think, to put in her milk,
Okay.
As soon as I unstrapped her from the stroller, she jumped up and took off running. It threw out, like, screaming, like, in the doctor's office, so much so that nurses were coming, people were coming out of rooms.
Yeah. Like, what's going on out there? Yeah.
Yeah. And she found her, and she ultimately wedged herself between one of the beds and a wall in the room. And, of course, the nurses are trying to help, and they're trying to calm her down. And the doctor, there were so many people that I couldn't even get to her.
Yeah. Oh.
And in that situation, I had to, like, really, like, just be like, everybody stop and let me get to her. Like, I'm the only person that is going to be familiar, and I'm barely a familiar face, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to, like, get to her, but I was embarrassed. I was a little shocked.
Rattled, stressed out. Yeah.
All these people are, like, freaking out at the same time. So that was the old me. Then, the neuroplasticity me was the one who would have immediately told everyone to back away, like, wouldn't have allowed them even they were offering her lollipops, like, I would have been like, no, you guys all need to leave. I need to close the store and just be with her. Just be with her and sit with her and understand her and feed her calming words and just really allow her the permission to have this event without trying to stop it so much as just allowing it to
kind of bring her in for a landing.
Yes.
Okay.
For a softer landing.
Wow. What? Like, I'm like, oh, should we change the name of the episode here? No.
Maybe.
What we're going to do is we'll segue this right moment into how we apply this to your teachings. Yes. So, guys, I'm really excited to hear what Traci has to say in our third segment. So don't go away. We'll see you in a few on The Good Soul. Join our friends at the Mari Foundation for the 4th annual Harvest Moon Ball. This massively impactful event will include a silent and live auction, food, and an opportunity for you to give back in a place that will have tremendous impact. All the proceeds will support the children's homes of Iredell County that houses and nurtures foster children in our area. The event will be held at Trump National Golf Club on November 17th from 6 to 9 p.m. You can find them at themarifoundation.com, where you can purchase tickets or just simply donate. Just know that your presence would mean the world to them, and more importantly, the world to the youth that they serve. Welcome back, everybody. We're on segment 3, Unlocking Financial Wellbeing. We're with Traci Shanklin, and this story is also turned into a little bit of learning about international adoption, which I really like to make a whole nother episode on it. So we left off in the doctor's office, and you're finding a neuroplasticity.
You got it. Neuroplasticity.
Yes. And this is a method that you've used with your daughter.
Right.
And somehow it's inspired you to become a financial well-being coach. I'm really excited to make this connection.
So backing up a little bit, I did go into the financial services. I worked in the institutional investment space for 20 plus years. So I worked for a hedge fund. I worked for a retirement company, and did a lot of educating on various investment strategies throughout my career. So it's not a complete leap, but I was in the financial I was in the financial investment career, in that career when I had my babies. And during this time where I was dealing with this particular trauma with my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to find a way to be home because I traveled so much for my career. And I was looking at various different things to do. And bottom line is, at some point, I decided to leave that business. There was a lot of factors that contributed to me being able to leave. And I left, but I left a high-paying job, and I suddenly became an entrepreneur and was piecing it together myself, and wasn't really changing my spending habits.
Okay.
And so there was some, financial tensions that just crept up in with my husband and I and our family, and just realizing we can't spend at this clip anymore. And what does that look like? And my husband, God bless him, he's an accountant by trade. So he had been, has always done the finances. And so I, at some point, was like, I need to understand what's going on so that I can figure out how to change my behavior and my contribution to this problem.
And it becomes a fun little game too.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yeah.
It's like dopamine almost.
And so I kind of, took his 14-tab spreadsheet and started to try to digest it, and was completely overwhelmed and felt like this was, so my way of dealing with it was to avoid it. Like I would say I was going to do it, but then I wouldn't do it. And at some point, I had this aha moment of like, I was in fight, flight, or freeze with regard to our finances, because it was really triggering for me. Yeah. And as I looked at it, I've always been a self-help person. I've read so many books.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. Yeah.
So
we're like, read that one night at the table.
Yeah. So I would sit back. So I took this step back and was like, why am I like so triggered by money? And started to really journal on it, and realize that a lot of it had to do with some family programming. And I say programming, I don't mean, well, look, we grew up in the 80s. My mom was a stay-at-home mom up until the point where my parents split. My parents split it when I was 8, and my mom did go to work. She started to work. But there was money love for your father? Or was that one of the few ways he could get to you if you weren't living with him?
I think so. I feel like that really blurred the lines for me with finances.
Absolutely.
Like they say with Italians, food is love. Yeah. I'm like, money was love if you grew up in the 80s. Yes, that was how your parents got to you. Yeah.
It was also a controlling factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Too. Completely.
So I think that my parents were having a bad divorce, and money was the way in which the control was being, exhibited, both by my mom trying to make demands on my dad, and my dad saying, trying to stay in control of it. Like, to keep the box the way he wanted it. Yeah. And, I was definitely in the middle of all that. And then, my mom remarried, and I had a stepfather that really was not good with money. I mean, he just, he never could figure it out. Okay. So I had some bad influences.
Did you guys deal with like electric getting shut off and that sort of thing?
We basically did. I actually don't recall ever having the electric shut off, but there was a lot of moving around, I think, because we were being kicked out of places that we were living in. And there was definitely a lot of creditors calling. It was back in the day when, we had an answering machine that we could hear, so you didn't pick up unless you knew who it was.
Hard for everybody. Yeah. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. And so I realized, like, in this process, I realized that I was in this state of fight, fright, or freeze, and that neuroplasticity was very much something that I could apply in this case. And I just started to write down my triggers every time I was triggered by money, or I realized that I had that spending money was a coping mechanism too. Like going out shopping was just like a way to sort of settle when I was nervous, or, and And so it was during like just looking at all of that I realized this is very applicable and it's very important. I mean, you mentioned 64%, I believe, of people feel that money stress is one of the greatest stressors in their life. 37% of people say they couldn't afford a $400 emergency, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have a real financial crisis. I think it's looming, sort of. I mean, I think it's here. It's not even looming, but we're not really thoroughly talking about it. And I don't know what it is about money, but money is like a taboo subject. You would sooner talk about your sex life with someone than you would about how much money you have in your bank account.
Completely agree.
So it's a very weird topic to get people to talk on and talk about and to address. And yet it is one of the most important things that somebody can do in their life, is really sit back and, become well with their money. And, I look at financial well-being, and I think it's really about feeling good about your money, but not just how much money you have, but how you're managing it. It's about feeling like you're in control of it and it's not controlling you. Mm-hmm. So that's really where I spend a lot of time working with people is, giving them the tools it takes to feel that sense of control.
Mm-hmm. I had Chris McClure on the show. He's a certified family counselor therapist.
Yes.
And my husband and I did, right here. And we talked marriage counseling. And it's funny, even preparing for the show with you, I'm like, okay, I would have talked about anything. I mean, obviously wouldn't want to embarrass our kids talking about our sex life on the podcast with Chris, but you could have asked me anything. As soon as we sat down and I was like thinking, and I'm planning the show and how we're going to handle this. And I'm like, oh, maybe we should obviously not talk dollars and cents, but let's make me the subject. And I was like, no way, never, like so incredibly shameful in way, things that you do. It's like and it shouldn't be. Because it's the fruit of, there's so many beautiful, wonderful things to experience and taste and enjoy as a result of prosperity. Yeah. And that's another thing. A lot of people, especially the kids these days, they like almost poo-poo prosperity, like rich people are bad and, all that stuff, which I do not agree with. I mean, I always say every wealthy person I've ever known who I really admire, integrity, hard work, while we're sleeping, they're working and they're planning, and so forth. Traci, I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say we need to make this 2 episodes. We need to make this 2 episodes. I'm sure everybody agrees. So we're going to keep talking as long as you're cool with this. Yeah. Let's keep going on and talking more about your history. I love how you explained to us what your definition of financial wellness was. And maybe in the 4th segment, what we'll do is we'll get into our different generations. We can talk about young adults. We can talk about middle-aged people putting their kids through college. And then we can get into a little bit of retirement, holiday spending. And then I'd like to have you come back and really get into the details of your financial well-being program on your website so we can give a general idea. And hopefully you guys will be tempted because I know I'm tempted to try it. So on that notion, I think we should wrap up the 3rd segment and then let's get back into, again, a little bit more of talking about your definition of financial well-being. And we'll see you on the flip side, guys. So don't go away. We'll be back for segment 4 on The Good Soul. Thanks for being here. This segment of The Good Soul is brought to you by Aaron Fisnick, certified luxury home specialist with Ivester Jackson, Christie's International Real Estate. Erin's not only an amazing agent, but she's also an amazing friend to me with a diverse mix of happy Lake Norman clients, each with their very own unique circumstance and challenge. She's a one-of-a-kind boss lady who I endorse wholeheartedly. Erin can be reached at 704-728-5657 or reach out to me and I'll get you guys connected. Thank you, Aaron Fisnick, for adding your magic to all of your real estate transactions. And thank you guys for tuning into and supporting the show. We are eternally grateful. Mwah. Big kisses. Welcome back, everybody, to The Good Soul. This is now, I'm going to call it part 1 of Unlocking Financial Wellbeing, 4th segment, because Traci, me too. I'm just so incredibly inspired by your story. I was when I learned more about you in Mexico. And money has always been an extreme hot button for me. If there's anything I wake up panicking over is what's the bank balance? To me, and I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, the coming of age of computers and the app, the fact that I can tap on my Wells Fargo app every morning and if my bank, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? That's not something I should be doing. I should be, focusing on growth and meditation and starting the day out right. So there's a great Marianne Williamson book, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's a blue book. And there's a quote, and I believe it's Doris Day at the beginning, who says, it was an actress, and she said, I can tell you I've been, they say money doesn't buy happiness, but I've been broke and I've been rich. And I can tell you I'm much happier when I was rich.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think the big thing for me too is was again, still, I don't want to say I wing it. I'm on a fixed income with investments and so forth. The studio is more like a fun retirement gig for me. So I do kind of have a fixed income. However, it's always been like, everything will be fine. Everything will be taken care of. Fortunately, I've never had the lights shut off or anything like that. I always manage to but it shouldn't be that way. It should be rhythmic. So I don't know. Maybe I will expose myself a little bit to you and start working with you.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, I know.
And I think that so I mentioned that when I think of financial well-being, I think of it as that sense of peace you get when you know that you've covered all your bills and you have also planned for the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is really financial well-being. And you make a very good point that, even when you kind of if you're checking your balance every day, you kind of know what you have in your bank account because but there are people that I've read a book that talked about this, that the reason you're checking your balance could be very different for different people. Like it could be, that you are, that you're worried about you're worried more now. You're checking it more now because you're worried about growing older, right? So
okay,
it's usually it's usually attached to something else. It's not about the money specifically. Mm-hmm. It's normally attached to what is feeling like a little bit out of control, right? And so that's where I would say. And one of the things that we do in unlocking financial well-being when I work with people is I really spend a lot of time at the foundation of it all is what are your core values? Is getting very clear. And core values are those things that are the most meaningful to us. They're the things that we feel the most alive when we're doing or being or, feeling. And they're different for everyone. And yet there are some common ones that I hear. People will often say family, but I often challenge someone and say, what is it about family? Because you could have two, to my earlier point, you could have two people that say they value family, but you have one that truly deeply values education, and then another one that deeply values connection. And while it's family, one mother is saving and father is saving all their money to get the best education for their kids, while the other one is saving all their money so they can give them experiences or take family vacations. So, you really have to ask sort of deeper questions about, you can broadly say, of course, family is a core value for many people, but what is it about
It's
family?
funny because you just described my sister. I feel like my sister, although my sister does great experiences with her kids too, but she's more education and I'm more, no, I want to live. I want to live with my kids. I want to make sure, so it's so funny that you should say that.
Yeah.
Another big thing for me is to wanting to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So when I had stores and managing an inventory and cash flow was incredibly challenging. I always say with the studio, it's so much easier. I have 4 bills: payroll, electric, rent, and insurance. It's not that simple, but it really is a lot easier to manage a budget at a yoga studio. But one of the hardest parts or most powerful reasons why I closed my business down is I'm tired of not being able to pay my vendors some days. And I don't want to upset them. They've sent me the merchandise. They need to feed their families. I'm embarrassed to have to say, you have to wait a week. You have to wait 2 weeks. It was a horrible feeling. And I'm sure that holds true for everybody. Yeah. But I love what you had mentioned on one of your videos that, it was like a rush did you say it was a rush for you? It's like every time I pay a bill, it was like a very gratifying experience. Yeah. It's almost like playing a video game where I'm like, pshung, pshung, I love nailing those. I love my Excel spreadsheet.
It's the checking of the box.
Checking of the box. Yeah, that's what you said.
I love
the checking
to
of the
check
box.
A box.
Oh yeah.
And a to-do is done.
Yeah.
But but when you are in control and you do have you know what you have and you have a plan for your money, then paying those bills is not the most agonizing thing in the world. I mean, when I mentioned when I was an actress, there were definitely times I would put off my bill paying until the last possible minute. Because it just gave me so much anxiety to open up my checking account or my QuickBooks or whatever I was using at the time and see what I really had. That it was very confronting. And, confronting the truth is hard. It's not easy. But there's definitely, I don't know, it's so rewarding when I watch a client move from that feeling of that desperate sort of lack of control feeling that you have around money to a feeling of like, this is actually like they start leaning into the idea that, oh, I can plan for the holidays. We mentioned the holidays coming up. I can plan for my holiday spending now because I'm like looking at the full picture. I'm not just looking at a slice of like this moment in time.
And you have the money and you're not putting everything on credit, which is a whole nother.
That's a whole nother conversation. But there's a very big, we haven't really touched on the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Most people are living it.
Part two.
Part two.
We'll really get into
go
it.
Down that path. Yeah. But that credit card float is part of paycheck to paycheck.
Well, you look at like the money that you spend in interest, it's unbelievable. And you don't realize it because you're just paying that minimum payment or whatever it is you're paying. Another thing that I had learned in one of my favorite financial books, whatever you want to call it, is Rhonda Byrne, who wrote The Secret, did one all on money. And one thing she said is when we pay our bills, we almost like do it in haste. But no, not me. Every time I pay a bill, I'm so grateful that I can pay that bill. I'm grateful for the lights that are on above my head. And I really, truly mean that. But that was a learned behavior because back when you were acting, I had a clothing store right back when I was younger and I was really like starting out. It wasn't the case. I looked at money again, like we said, like it's a dirty word almost. So this is all exciting stuff. Here's one. Okay, so we want to, definitely in part 2, we're going to go over your 4-part workshop, which is really exciting. I want to kind of go over the different chapters in our life. So these 2 episodes, we want everybody to feel like it applies to all of us. So there's the scenario for the person, say Molly and Kyle. They're in their early 30s, let's say. They're starting out, so they're young adults. And then there's middle age, right, where we have kids and how am I going to put all 3 of my children through college? What was I thinking having 3 kids 3 years apart or 1 year apart each, right? And then we can also talk retirement too, which is like an interesting topic. Is there any part of the life, like our lifetime, that you're most passionate about that you feel is the most important?
Well, I think... really, no. Well, yes, because you mentioned all of them because when you start, when you're, in that 30-ish, time frame, you're building your family. There is a lot of potential there that I think goes untapped because there are so many things happening that very few couples take the time to really think about the future and what they want it to look like. And again, that goes back to those core values and the core values can change in different stages of our life. I mean, they're not stagnant. Many of them will remain the same, but there can be little variances as you move into another stage of life. But I think that those early 30s, I mean, I always find myself saying it's never too early to start thinking about your money because you don't necessarily have to start saving for retirement in your 30s, although it's not such a bad idea. If you have access to a 401k, you should definitely be contributing to that and potentially even maxing out that contribution if you can. But you really do want to start looking ahead and thinking about how, one of the things you mentioned that I'm a certified coach with UNAB. It's called You Need a Budget. It's a budgeting spending application that I think really, I love it because I think it truly can help change behavior.
Right. And kind of systematizes the way you approach your budget.
It does. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people would say, oh, it's just a spreadsheet. It really is way more than a spreadsheet. Yeah. It's in many ways, it's magic. But
so is Weight Watchers, but they've been helping women and men across the universe.
I mean, I can give you a spreadsheet, but the thing is that it makes it actionable. And I really believe that you have to have an actionable budget to make things work. So when you move, like we were talking about, you're 30 something. If you know what your true expenses are, then now you can start planning for, you may have preschool that you have to start planning for, or you're looking at how the educational system and how you
buying a new house,
buying your first house,
our first car,
all those things,
our first not jalopy car. I got to get the minivan,
but starting to really plan that out, and looking at it so you're not contributing to a grander debt, like for the incidental things. Right. You're covering those known infrequent expenses, right? You want this. This is a goal, or you're
or you need it. You need. Well, it's funny because I say to the kids all the time, all of our girls are in their 20s. We just had our oldest turn 30, but I told you this recently, like reading Ramit Sethi's book. I say, if you put $20 away a week, or, you hear all these equations, you'll have $10 million by X age. So in our next episode, we are going to roll our sleeves up and really get into the nuts and bolts of all of this. All of you, I have a homework assignment for you in the meantime. I want you to visit Traci's website, which is
UnlockingFinancialWellbeing.com. It all runs together. Yes. UnlockingFinancialWellbeing.com.
And I will put a link in the comments. And I want you guys to start reading up and marinating. Go on her YouTube page, Traci Shanklin. I'm sure there's a link to your YouTube page on your website as well. And I'll put a link in our comments and description. And guys, listen, we're going to get busy next week. We're going to roll up our sleeves and really get into things. So I'm really excited to have you back, Traci. That went way too. I think that episode went faster than any episode in the history of this show. That was wonderful. Good. Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share, and just keep coming back, and we'll keep dishing out to you the good stuff. We love you. We are so grateful to have you here, and we'll see you for episode 2, Unlocking Financial Wellness, here on The Good Soul. So see you next week.